Welcome to another video from the series First Steps on the RebelMouse CMS. In our last video we introduced you to the sections dashboard and with that, the taxonomy that, here at RebelMouse manage all posts and the main differences between sections and tags. In this video we will talk about a section of the CMS that let developers extend the functionality of any site creating their own backend endpoints using JavaScript. Let's dive into the client backends. As we said before, the topic for this video is a very powerful tool that lets you create whatever endpoint you might need using JavaScript. Because of this, there's a whole course in client backends, so we're going to just do a quick overview. Here on the client backends dashboard you will be able to create your own script and you will be able to receive calls on this endpoint with any payload that you require or query parameters and do whatever you want within the script. There are multiple ways why would you use client backends. The main purpose is to give developers the flexibility of extending the functionality of our CMS in a simple way. Let's see some examples to illustrate a basic use of the tool. Let's say that we want to build a third-party integration. So you might want to set a webhook whenever a post is published or a user is created in the CMS, within your site, and that webhook calls this endpoint. Within this endpoint, you make some third-party API calls to any third-party web service, like Piano or any other. Another example would be when you want to make an API call. It can be a RebelMouse API call or a third-party service API call, but you will have credentials that are critical and that are private and you don't want to share because of the permissions that they have. Let's say it's not only read-only but write access as well. So, in that case, it would create your client backend endpoint and use it as a wrapper to hide the private key. You can even set your own authentication within this client backend endpoint using JWT or any other resource. And within the script, make your API call and provide your key. Now let's talk about the components of a client backend endpoint. First, you can enable or disable it. You can select which HTTP method you want to use. An endpoint can reply to every HTTP method or just, for instance, to a GET method if you need it to be. Each method will be a different endpoint, regardless that they all have the same slug. They will all have different scripts, and you also have a slug, which here is called the endpoint path. So you can provide your slug. Also, we have this area called the endpoint control, where you can define what query parameters you want this endpoint to receive, any payload, custom headers or cookies. But the most important part, of course, is the script. Here is where all the logic of your endpoint is going to live. We'll cover all the other fields in depth in the course. But for now, what you need to know is that basically this will have a main function where you will be doing all of your work. So you will receive the input, which will have the query parameters, payload, headers, whatever you specify, and then you can do whatever you want with it. Call to third-party services, as we mentioned, then return any response that you want based on your logic. Now let's create our first client backend. As you can see, whenever we access client backends, we will get an example client backend. It's like a sort of hello world. So let's create our own hello world using the example. You may see that in here we have a couple of errors, because body, headers and cookies are not being referenced. But let's just ignore this error message for now so that we can test it out. So let's save our script. And here we have it. We can click in here and we will see that it will complain that we didn't provide the name property, because if you see in here the query parameters, the property name is being required. So let's just add a name in there. And here you see how it's greeting itself. It's that easy to create your custom input. So we look forward to seeing what you can build with this very flexible tool. That's all you need to know about the client backends for now. See you in the next video and thanks for watching.